Hi, everybody, and welcome. So I'm Lianne Shinton of Pet Biz Experts, rebranding to automation dogs very soon, which is a big project, so bear with us. And we do offer software CRM for dog trainers to make their lives easier and help them with their customers. And Flirty's here with me. You might see her ears in the background. Um, Today, again, thank you, Erica, for joining us because
Sure.
Erica Boling from Northeast Canine Conditioning, she did a wonderful podcast with us the other day. So definitely take a listen about utilizing tech to make your life as a dog trainer easier, increase the value of your programs so that you provide better customer service and, customers will love you. So definitely take a listen to that one. And welcome, Erica. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me back again today.
Thank you for joining us. Before we get started on, I guess, educating owners is going to be the focus of today, but I wanted to ask you about your personal dogs and any dog sports, if you wouldn't mind sharing, because we hadn't talked about that. I was
Yeah, we
curious.
didn't talk about that last time. Yeah, so my background, I guess I grew up, with dogs and horses when I was little, but I got involved with search and rescue. This was probably over 20 years ago. And I had a Doberman that was bred for more like for conformation show. I bought her as a pet, but I wanted to do something just engaging more than just like competing for ribbons. And I thought, search and rescue, something more meaningful. And I had her evaluated at a seminar, search and rescue event over a weekend, and they thought she had some talent for it. And I was like, really? She's like show lines, she's not working lines, and they said she seemed to be really good with her nose. And so I got involved in search and rescue, and I got my own certification, was training with her as a trailing dog. Eventually we got to the point where the trails were getting so challenging that she just didn't have the drive to push through the more challenging trails. And I was hooked in the working dog world, and decided I was going to get a true working dog, bred for the work, for search and rescue. And that was my first Malinois. And his name was Bocce. He passed away. He was over 14 years old a while ago. But when I got him for search and rescue, and I started learning about Frenching and protection sports. And people know Malinois and some of the bloodlines out there. Like, it was in his DNA. So I kind of dabbled a little bit, kind of exploring search and rescue and also protection sports. And he just lived for the bite work and protection sports. So I got involved in Frenching and competed with him. And then I got a second Malinois and did also protection Frenching work with him. I did narcotics detection with him also, and then got involved in my first dog got injured. That got me involved in canine fitness. I started my canine fitness business. And over time, just got really involved in the sport and working dog world and canine fitness, and also helping some of the police canine handlers I worked with, and I did some teaching with a police canine academy in New Jersey. And it just kind of all grew from there. But it kind of started with transitioning from, growing up with pet dogs to the search and rescue, and then the protection sports and detection work. So I would say my passion in the dog world is the sport and working dogs and canine fitness, and the interest in fitness was sparked with my own dog's injury. So right now I've got one Malinois Knox. He's a senior now. He's older. My first Malinois Bocce, like I said, he passed away. It's been about a year and a half. Before that, had golden retriever, the Doberman, cocker spaniel when I was little. And so I've been involved from just some informal obedience rally. I did agility for fun, but it's really, I would say my heart is really in the sport and working dog and the fitness.
I just love those stories too of how the dogs take us on this journey, and you're open to it, and you see this journey for you based on, the search and rescue took you into the working dogs. And then, of course, the bite work is fun. And then, of course, the injury, and then taking you into canine fitness, like being open to see those things that created this journey and this life for you, that now you have this great place up in Maine and have digital courses, and you're helping dog trainers. What an amazing journey. So today, I mean, last time we talked, it's like a flip. It just flipped with you. Like when we started talking about educating people, I mean, next level. Like you're so intelligent and you're so skilled at this. So
Thank you.
I don't even know where to start. So I'll let you kind of talk about,
What I've
beliefs and
seen.
habits and what
Yeah.
you want to help dog trainers with regards to helping
Working with
their
owners.
owners. Yeah.
Yeah. So my background right now, a lot of people know me for the canine fitness and the dog related stuff. But my background, at first, that was kind of a hobby before it became a business. But my background is I'm an educator at heart. Like I've been teaching animals, teaching people, teaching, educating, training, like ever since like before kindergarten. I was like, a little baby's book. What does Erica want to do when she grows up? And it was like, I want to teach. So whether it's teaching humans, teaching, I was taught in the schools, to teaching adults at the university, to training dogs. If I learned something, I always enjoyed teaching others. If I was the first one with my cousins to learn to play the piano, I taught them how to play the piano, or started learning sports and basketball, I would go and teach my cousins. So I got involved in education, and my background is in education. I have a PhD in education, curriculum development, and policy, which with my dog's injury, I was doing fitness and the canine stuff as a hobby on the side, but my passion just really, really kept growing in that. And at the same time, I was an associate professor in the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers University. I'd been there for almost 20 years, eventually when I left. But I had growing interest in the online world, online teaching and learning, canine fitness, so many interests. And I ended up, my online business in canine fitness actually reached a point where I was able to leave my university position. It was a tenured associate professor position, job for life if I wanted it. But I'm always one to believe in like having a life of passion. Like I never want to live a life where I just, spend 20 years in a job that's just a job, and you just wake up in the morning and just doing the same, I
Groundhog
see,
Day.
yeah, I see people that I know that it's like you wake up on a Monday and you're already counting down till Friday, and that's a huge chunk of your life to be wishing away. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't wait till Friday, and then Friday comes and you're dreading Monday. Like that's such a huge part of your whole life. And so it just got to the point I like learning, constant learning and growing and new challenges. So once I'd worked overseas, traveled abroad, got my PhD, got my tenured position. It's kind of like checking, and it's kind of like, where's the next challenge? So it took me a while to figure it out, but I was able to take my passion for online teaching and learning, my passion for technology, my passion for education, my passion for dogs, my passion for fitness. And I was able to combine all that together when I created Northeast Canine Conditioning Academy. So I have an online business, and we have online canine fitness programs and an online certification program. And I essentially my vision was creating a canine, like a train the trainer program, where you're teaching dog trainers about fitness so they can bring fitness to their clients. So even though I'm teaching canine fitness, I'm teaching, it's a train the trainer model, right? I'm teaching other people to educate others. So if you're a dog trainer, and whether you're training fitness or you're, doing behavior modification or whatever, ultimately, I mean, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, I mean, ultimately, you are an educator of people. You
Yes.
are a trainer of people. Because unless that dog lives with you 24/7, if the dog's coming to you with problems, whether they're obesity, fat, biting, reactivity, obviously, if somebody comes to you, it's because they can't solve that problem on their own. And so they've come to you. And so probably there's some ingrained behaviors and beliefs and patterns of interacting with that dog or previous dogs that have been there for a while. ideally it's nice to catch them when they get a puppy and right off the bat, and but usually that's not happening. Usually they come to you and there's already a lot of things that have been going on.
Yes.
So you can go and work with a dog. You can do board and train. I mean, people listening to this, if you're a dog trainer, like, this, ultimately you have to have an impact on the human to make changes. So either you train the dog and they have to follow up with what you taught them, or they have to have major life changes in how they're living at home. So ultimately you have to be able to, yes, help the dog and change, create change in behaviors, whatever it is you're working with the dog. But as a dog trainer, you have to be able to educate the owner. And so in my canine fitness, I work with a lot of dog trainers. They get certified in canine fitness and they have to submit a video lesson to get certified. They have to show them interacting with dogs and handlers and do a little mini lesson so that I can see how they present something, how the owner and dog respond, and how they interact and give support to help them learn. And I've been doing this for many, many years, both in the non-dog world and in the dog world, decades, in educating people and helping people learn and helping people teach on whatever the discipline is. And typically what is very, very common, and when I've worked with teachers and training teachers, like I said, it's not just dog trainers, is that it's predominant in the United States and a lot of countries, is kind of this very kind of a didactic, I have knowledge, I'm the expert, and I'm going to give you the answer. You're having a problem, you did something wrong, so I'm going to tell you how to fix it, which is really, really important, right? We need to give them access to like the answers and to the information, because if they had it, they wouldn't need you. But the problem is when we convey information, typically people are doing it in a way that's not the best way for the other end, for the human to learn, and to learn on a deep level and to retain what they're learning. So frequently what we see is a lot of talking at the people, just telling them what they did wrong, telling them what they need to do differently, telling them how they need to change things at home. And many times, I'm sure people can relate it, for the long term, it's not highly effective. It's not a matter of just, do this differently, because we know when they go home, follow through. Do they follow through? Do they do it right? You can tell them, 10 times. And so what I've been in a wonderful position where I'm able to work with dog owners, dog trainers, and dog handlers, but able to use also my background in what I've spent decades of studying and learning and doing research in, essentially, how humans learn best and learn well and teach well, whether it's in person. I've also done research in online, so teaching online and how to be effective online. So that some of the things that I see, and I mean, there's a lot of topics we can talk about, but I guess the first thing that what I like to tell people is, when you're explaining something and trying to break away from that kind of pattern of our teaching that might be, and I'm guilty of it too, because I have all this information and I want to share. So I'll be like, let me tell you, all the stuff I know so I can help you. So I will do, I'm guilty of it too. But one of the first things people can look at, just a very simple way to think about how to improve your interactions with dog owners and to have maybe a better impact, is one of the things I see frequently is to talk less and to listen more and ask a lot more questions. I see a lot of times, like I said, it's not just dog trainers, but a lot of times when people are teaching, I can sit and observe for 30 minutes and the learner, whoever that might be, the dog owner, says nothing. There is just the information's one way, and go to seminars. This is also, I teach people how to do like canine fitness seminars and workshops. Commonly we'll go to a seminar, right? And you have working spots and auditing spots. Mm-hmm. So the working spot people, they kind of maybe go one at a time. They'll come and interact. And the auditors, what are they doing? They're just kind of passively sitting there listening, maybe taking notes, occasionally asking a question. But when I think about a passive learner, it's not just a matter of them just asking questions, but it's also engaging them cognitively, mentally in what they're learning. So one of the things that I have found, and that I'll do online and also in person, is I will educate and I will give them the information. There has to be a starting point, but it's also asking a lot of questions to see where are they coming from? What lens are they coming from? What do they see and what do they not see? And when you have an expert and a novice, some big things that we know in research with experts and novices is that usually the novice has no idea where to put their attention. So they will frequently be focusing on the wrong thing because they don't know any better. They don't know what to pay attention to. And then also the expert, all the things, all the thought process and the decision making and all those connections and complexities that are going on in the expert's head in making a decision. And a lot of times we're not even aware of all the things all the decision making we're going through. That is not, a lot of times in teaching to the novices, a lot of what's happening here is not visible to the novice. So when you're just telling them to change your body posture or hold the leash this way or stop doing this or stop doing that, even though we think that we're being clear on what they should pay attention to, a lot of times the novice, they're not taking it in the way that we're communicating it. and they're focusing or emphasizing things that are different. And then also a lot of things that as an expert that we just take for granted, that we're just making all these connections in our brain and making sense of things, they have no idea. Like they're completely not even realizing, take A and B and put them together. Like they don't even see A and B. So some of the things that I'll do is I will ask questions. Like, for example, if we have a video of their dog or a video of them handling their dog, or they're looking at their dog doing something right in front of them. And instead of jumping right in, of course, I'll educate, give some education and share some knowledge first, but, or I might want to just assess and see where they are even before I teach them, right? They come to me and I want to know, like, where are they? What do they even see? So let's say they come to me and I've not even taught them anything yet. And I'm saying, okay, go do this with your dog and show me what you do with your dog on, these scenarios. And then you could just say, okay, okay, let's just stop right here. What did you just see your dog do? What stood out to you? Why do you think your dog did that? I just noticed that you did that behavior 3 times, 2 times he did this, but did you notice on the last time, why do you think, that behavior was different on the last time? Or maybe they didn't even see the difference. So what I will do sometimes is just stopping and pausing. And before I tell them what I see, before I tell them what to correct, before I tell them like what they need to do differently, is I ask them, what stands out to you? What did you see? Why do you think your dog did that? Why do you think you did that? And that helps, number one, to see if they're even aware of what happened, because their dog might have done something that you're like, oh my gosh, and they're just not even noticing it, or they don't even think it's an issue, right? They don't even think it's an issue. Sometimes I'll have people where I've had it where people have been handling a dog and I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're making all these horrible, like they're going to get bit and they're stressing the dog out. And I'm ready to be like fail them. Like, you did not pass this activity. Like, this is not good. But before I said anything, I asked it was a dog trainer. And I said, how do you think this went? And what do you think was going on? How do you feel about what you just did? And that person was able to rip everything apart and was able to identify everything that I was super anxious about, and realized what he did wrong, why he did it wrong, why he was stressing the dog, and what he would do differently. And just before opening my mouth, I had made an assumption that, oh my gosh, he's clueless. Right. He wasn't clueless. It's just that was a learning opportunity, and being able to reflect on himself. He's like, oh my gosh, I should have even taken the leash. I should have kept the owner and let the owner go through this exercise first I took the leash too soon. The dog was very uncomfortable with me. I stressed the dog out, and I would have had no idea that he had that understanding if I hadn't of just shut my mouth and first just said, tell me what you're thinking. What are you seeing? And then there's other times where I'll do that and I'll ask them, for example, I will be teaching an exercise. I'll give a fitness example because that's what I do a lot of, is I'll be telling them they'll be demonstrating a fitness exercise, and we want to look at really good posture, right? The dog has to have good posture. We don't want them, to be out of balance. And I will be watching an exercise, and the end of the dog is totally, the posture's off. The dog is maybe showing it's in pain. There's all kinds of issues, and I don't say anything, but I'll ask the owner, okay, they did the exercise, and I'll say, how do you think that went? And they'll be like, oh yeah, he was, he did it really well. He was really well balanced. He performed it well. And I'm like, they completely were not observing at all the hind end. Or if they did, they had nothing stood out of what was happening in the hind end. And so then what I can do whenever I pose that question, now I have feedback. Now I have a better understanding of where that learner, where that person is. What are they acknowledging? What are they seeing? What are they not seeing? What do they already understand and what do they not understand? Now I can start inserting my comments and guide them. So the one who did not notice what was happening in the hind end, I could be like, oh, well, yeah, he was balanced in the front, but let's go back and I'm going to share with you what I saw. And then I'll go and revisit and then share with them what I was seeing and why. Maybe if they made a statement that I disagree with, I would say, that's not how I saw. I'm going to share with you how I saw, and I'm going to share with you why, and let me point this out. And so now I'm guiding them, and I've seen exactly where kind of their holes and gaps and understandings and misunderstandings are. And then now I can better guide them. But that's one thing, like I said, a lot of times is people start as, the client is messing up or they're doing something incorrectly. And the first step is to kind of come in and be like, no, do this, no, do that. Or here, I'm going to show you how to do it. Right. And just kind of take over.
Yeah.
And so asking more questions and asking questions so that the owner is those self-reflective questions. So it's kind of like, why do you think that? Or, oh, okay, your dog didn't perform that the correct way. What do you think you could do differently? Or what do you think you could have done differently? You didn't get the results you wanted. What do you think you might have done differently to change that? And so that's engaging them now more on that higher level and more kind of problem solving. It's giving them some more agency, and it's engaging them on a deeper level and mentally at a higher cognitive level. And if they can come to those aha moments and those conclusions when you're guiding them, if they can come to the realization like, oh my gosh, I should have done this instead, that's going to stick with them way better than if you're just telling them, change this, do that.
Yes. So just to give you a chance to breathe, because you were giving so much great information, but I was thinking about one of the common ones is a new puppy or a new dog in the house, and it has too much freedom. And we all know, what that looks like and some of the steps that we can take to, help solve that. And I think, instinctually as a dog trainer, we're like, okay, well, you're going to need to, keep an eye on them and tether them. And we're giving instructions right away. Yeah. So maybe could you walk through I'll play the part of I have my new golden doodle puppy and he's peeing behind the couch and, he's biting the kids and it's going crazy over here. Maybe how could we talk to versus just talking at them?
Yeah. One of the things that I'll do a lot, like if I'm working with somebody for the first time or there's a new problem, right, is I will also ask a lot of questions first to get a better context. So I'll say, what's a typical day? What are you normally doing? Okay, what's the setup in the home, right? What was there something that day when you're having problems that was different from your normal schedule? Where's the crate? And so I'll ask a lot of questions first to just collect information so that I have a better understanding of what the scenario is, because sometimes what they're telling you, if you're not seeing it, there's other things going on. And if you take it just at their surface level, right, you're going to be missing out stuff. So a lot of times when I'm first working with someone or a new problem or a new issue is I will ask a lot of questions to get more information to see, what's going on. Then what will happen is you have to do some education, because, for example, they may have no idea of how long can a puppy, hold their bladder before having to go to the bathroom, right?
Yes.
They may not know things like the relationship between when the dog is sleeping or waking up or eating, and, length of time after eating, how the body's working, and things like that. They might not understand things like overstimulation and how a puppy might respond when they're overexcited, overly tired, right? So depending on what the problem is, frequently you will probably find that there's a lack of understanding, and you have to help them better understand why the problem exists. And so this is, there is some teaching, it's some instruction and education that happens. So if I saw that they were going, let's say I'm asking a lot of questions, and I see that their child is playing with the puppy in a way that is overstimulating the puppy, is instilling, prey drive, or I see that they're going really long periods of time that really the puppy cannot hold it. Like the puppy has to go to the bathroom, or, the puppy's waking up and they're not going out immediately. They're just like, oh, the puppy wakes up. It's been in the crate sleeping for an hour or two. And then now it's going to run around the house for another hour before we take it out.
Yeah.
So then when I'm doing my kind of inquiry and my research to get the better context of the situation, I'll potentially see areas where I need to educate them and I need to help them understand better of the needs of the puppy. So that's where I might then say, well, okay, let me, explain what I think is happening here. Why maybe this escalation of what's happening with the child playing with the puppy and what's the problems that they're seeing. And I'll state, here's what you're telling me or what I've seen, what I think is happening. If it's not happening right in front of you, you're just going on their words.
Yes.
So you might have to be like, and acknowledge, based on what you're telling me, but we may need more information. This is what I'm seeing, and this is why a good reason of why the puppy might be responding in this way. Then once I help them better understand, I could say, okay, so one of the things is we need to lower the stimulation, or we need to not reach that point where the puppy is just getting overly excited, or, we need to reach a stage where, physiologically, like the puppy really can't go that long, without needing or to go to the bathroom, or there's certain activities that are going to make it want to go to the bathroom more quickly. Then that's when I can say, okay, well, let's turn it to some questions and say, okay, let's brainstorm together. And, we know that your child has a habit of playing with the puppy in this particular way, and we're seeing it's getting overstimulated, overexcited. What are some ways that you think that we can, have some interactions with the puppy, but in different ways? And so that's where I will have some very distinct things. I'm sure it would be like, oh, they should do this, this, and this, and this. But that's where you can start engaging them and in that kind of problem solving process, because like I said, if they can help come up with the answers, then it's going to stick with them more. And there's some accountability and some ownership in that.
Yes.
So I usually will start with doing a lot of questions, like doing my research. I want to get as much information to understand the situation, what caused it, why, and to understand where they are in that process, what they understand is or is not happening. So once I have that information, like I said, frequently there is a need that they are not educated in certain areas. So there has to be a role where, yeah, I'm the expert, they're the novice. I have to educate them. But then once they can understand kind of let's look at puppy raising differently, let's look at, puppy play differently. Once I can help them understand that when I talk about play and they talk about play, it's two different things, and why, then we can now start tackling the behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And, part of me that is learning so much right now in the back of my mind is I'm thinking, oh, okay, this might make the lesson a little bit longer because I'm having more back and forth. But what you're saying makes so much sense because they're going to retain the information better. They're going to learn better and faster. So now I might have just saved myself an extra lesson that I didn't have to do because they got it.
Exactly. And then also when you do that, you can also sometimes encounter resistance. You can, it gets careful here, because sometimes you got to be careful when you're educating and teaching them to not put them in a defensive mode.
Yes.
Because you want them to feel like they could be successful, because if they don't feel like they can be successful, they're probably not even going to try. So when you're educating them, you have to educate them, but you also have to make them feel like they can do this. They have to feel empowered. And we have to, if they're doing things wrong and they really screwing things up, and they made the dog bite, they put their dog in the situation, a lot of times there can be a lot of guilt. There can be, what'll happen is, if we, through the education, if we start making them feel really bad about themselves and really guilty, that can make them become defensive. It can make them resistant, right? So there can be times where the things that we're educating them on are tough topics, and we have to acknowledge it can be really hard for them to hear it, because if they really love their dog, they think that what they're doing is the best interest of their dog, and hearing that what you're doing could be endangering your dog or has endangered your dog, or that your original beliefs and approach are completely wrong for whatever reasons, we have to be sensitive to how we communicate it and how they can take it in, because a lot of times, people will get frustrated, and the owners will get resistant and they push back. And sometimes we can sense it as like, oh, they're being, they're just, a challenging client, they're annoying, it's their personality. But sometimes, because I've been there, where I've been put in a situation, is either you realize you're doing something totally wrong, or you're doing something, or you're scared or you're nervous of what you're doing. And sometimes your first instinct, just self-preservation, is to just kind of
Yes.
resist it. Right. And you're not open to learning when you're defensive. You're not open to learning when you're fearful. You're not open to learning and change when you think you're going to fail and you can't do it. So that can be challenging. It's not just educating them, but we do, on certain topics and certain clients, we have to educate them, but also be aware that a lot of times there can be a lot of emotions involved.
Yeah.
Fear, guilt, doubt. And so when we are teaching them, it has to be in a way that doesn't make it, sound like, they're like, oh, I can never, do it. I did it wrong. Or, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible owner. And that's going to make it harder in the communication. And if you're trying to instill change in behavior and change in beliefs, we have to acknowledge the emotional state and the psychological state of the client. It's not just a matter of telling them what to do and how to do it.
I'm wondering about maybe an example here where we'd have to treat it with kid gloves would be, where I love my dog so much that it's become my child. And I'm babying this super driven herding instinct corgi like it's my little baby, and I have a stroller and I have all of that, because my other corgi, I do that and everything's fine. So why doesn't it work with this super high drive corgi?
Yeah.
And also, don't hurt my feelings because it's actually my child and I gave birth to it.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind there, I guess, is also kind of the researcher in me is a lot of times I like to make comparisons to things that they can relate to. Like when I'm talking about like fitness and what they're doing wrong with their dogs, right? That's going to endanger their dog. They might struggle to see it from the concept of the dog, but I'll say, okay, if you're a human athlete, you wouldn't do this, right? And so for a canine athlete, like you also wouldn't do it. So sometimes I'll approach it from the perspective of, let's look at fitness from the human side. And when they go, then they can make the connection to the dog.
Yes.
So this is interesting. If you're not aware of some of the research out there, there's actually research on dogs and also research on humans. There was I was just at a research conference on working dogs a few weeks ago, and they looked at mothering behaviors in female dogs with litters. And they looked at, it was seeing eye dogs and service dogs. And so they had generations of puppies that they bred and raised. And they looked at the mother dogs, and they looked at the ones that had very, kind of behaviors that were very motherly and tending and taking care of the puppies and very, very attentive to the puppies. And then they looked at the dogs, the mothers, that were not very super, they weren't bad mothers, but they just weren't overly attentive, super motherly, kind of behaviors.
Yes.
And they looked at the success of the puppies in service dog work, and they looked at the success for seeing eye dogs. And they found for like the seeing eye dogs, the mothers with the puppies that were not overly caring in the behaviors and just kind of, smothering with all that motherly love. Those seeing eye dogs, they were more likely to succeed as a seeing eye dog if the mother was not so kind of taking care of everything and letting them be a little bit more independent and be a little bit more, go out there and do stuff. The service dogs, it was interesting. It was the opposite. And if you think about a service dog that might be more in tune to the owner, or seizure, detecting seizures and things like that, to be so in tune with their owner. I mean, that's kind of a hypothesis, but kind of a theory based on the findings. Mm-hmm. But the service dogs, the ones that had the females that were a little bit more attentive, and the behaviors were more kind of the opposite, that those service dogs did better and were more likely to succeed. And so in human research, we're seeing research out there with parents raising children, and there's research out there that shows that when they're just these helicopter parents, right? We have research that shows the challenges and where the children are struggling. And so when just me and my background and knowing some of the research, I probably would relate it and say, it's interesting. There's some interesting things we're seeing with recent research on children and, behaviors when giving them independence or, less independence, or giving them more problem solving versus us taking over. And sometimes when you can help the owner make a connection first outside in other areas of their life that they could relate to, and then bring it to the puppy or to the dog that they're raising, I do find that a lot of times I will look at kind of ways to bring in examples that could be more relevant and help them connect easier first that way, before I then ask them to transfer those ways of thinking to their dog. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's bringing statistics and research to them to help change their beliefs.
Yeah. And I would say it's not just, I would look at, if I know that there's research out there to support it, I would say the way to present it, the numbers are important, but a more effective way when you're educating them is through stories. So you can share the numbers, right, and share the research. But if you share, like for example, I just gave the example of the service dogs and the seeing eye dogs. I could have just spouted out the research findings of the study, but instead I've kind of gave you a little bit more of, not the full story, but I mean, a little bit of the story. I gave you the background of the dogs and the raising of the puppies and the mother's taking care. So there's a little bit of, I'm putting it in context.
Yes.
So if you can look at, if there is evidence out there to support something, and things like dogs overheating and heat stroke, that's another thing I will educate on, is I can report the statistics on heat stroke, and I can report the statistics on dogs dying from heat stroke. But if I can share that information through stories and examples, that's typically is going to be more powerful.
Yes.
So I would turn to the research to see what's effective and what's not. But sharing it, if I can relay and educate the person about that, if there's any way I can tie it into examples and stories, typically we know that narrative ways and telling and learning through stories is a very powerful way to learn. So relevant examples and stories. So using the research, but the way you present it, it's not just the statistics.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Excellent information.
Yeah.
How about with clients that aren't doing the practice? So we, do a lesson, and then the next lesson we're like basically doing the same lesson because they're not maybe following through. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I think that come at play here. Is number one is the kind of client that you're attracting and the kind of client you're getting, because definitely there are some people that they don't want to do the work, as like just fix it, and how dedicated and how committed are they to getting the change in the dog, right? So if somebody is they look at it as just a quick easy answer, a quick easy fix, I'm not super committed to fixing the problem, then you can do all the education and all the motivation, and you can do all the storytelling in the world, but if it really doesn't matter that much to them, they're not going to change. Right. So part of that is kind of weeding out and seeing who are the actual committed clients, or just acknowledge, what, they're helping me pay the bills, they're not really into it, it really doesn't matter to them, whether the dog jumps on you or not. And, your criteria and expectations are different from them.
Yes.
So sometimes it may be that, you're spending all this time and energy how to teach the dog not to jump. But, I once dated a guy and he loved when the dogs jumped on him. Like, he thought it was great. And it was like, that's the way he bonds and connects with them. So it doesn't matter how much I teach, how to prevent the dog from jumping. If they're like, oh, I like when my dog jumps in, I'm totally fine if he jumps on me. So sometimes I see dog trainers get very frustrated because they have a level of kind of expectations that is a mismatch from the clients. So the dog trainer, wants the dog to not pull, or, doesn't want the dog reactivity and the dog, fighting along the fence line. But that owner, they might not care at all. I'll be like, it doesn't bother me. The dog barks all day. I don't care if the dog's barking. I'm inside. I don't hear it. My TV's up, or, my dog's not out interacting with dogs freely. So, if he's aggressive to the dog next door, it's not their biggest issue of the day. Right. So sometimes the trainers, you just have to be like, that's not what I would choose. That's not what's important to me. I would like to see the dog do more. But ultimately, if that's what that owner is satisfied with, you have to either decide, keep working with them, take their money, or realize that they're not the client for you. Right. So that's one thing is, being selective in who you want to work with. And then if you are choosing to, or you happen to get, somebody that is not as committed, or the behaviors that you're trying to teach, they really don't care about, you just have to accept that. So that's one thing, is sometimes no matter how much you educate or how much you encourage or motivate, some people, like, they're not on the same page. So we just have to acknowledge that and not beat ourselves up over it. And then you have to decide whether you keep them or not, or attract them, or do you want to work with them? That's, you have to, and then just accept that and not, beat yourself up every day over it. So that's
Or
kind of
take it as a win. Like, well, they gave me the money, they're happy. So
yeah.
I'll be happy. So yeah, just being like, okay, well, we're really not doing much of a full program here, but everybody's happy.
Yeah.
So let's
And
just
some people they might be perfectly fine. Like I have people for business consulting, they will pay me really good money to, maybe they're too busy, they don't get any really stuff done between our coaching sessions, but when we meet, we get a lot done. And they could be further
yes,
along in their business if they did stuff in between, but they don't, they're happy with that 1 hour with Erica. I learn a whole bunch. I know I could be doing more and doing stuff in between, but they get a lot of value. They enjoy that hour with me. So they keep coming, not every, and some people, they're doing all kinds of stuff in between. So they may be happy, like, okay, I'm happy and I feel good about myself, or my dog has a great time when we're together training with you. We do it once a week. I'm happy with that. If they're happy and, they're okay that the things aren't, moving along as fast, then it's like, okay, well, either accept that or decide they're not the client for you. Right. Then for the people who are seriously, they're committed and they do want to help their dog, but they're number one, let's say they're not doing the follow through. So the first thing is to kind of figure out why aren't they doing the follow through first? Because there could be a lot of different reasons. So what would you say are some of the more common ones that you see where people aren't following through? Like what are they saying why they're not following through?
I would say time would be probably the most important, is excuses, because they didn't have time. That would probably be the big
That's the big one.
excuse. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've seen just working with people and business owners and at various levels, a really challenging thing is organizing our day and our time and finding how to be efficient. And I work with very successful business owners. I got a little scratch in my throat. I work with very successful business owners who I spend a lot of time helping them to organize their time.
If you want to grab some water, I can pause it.
Okay.
Yeah. Take your time. Take your time.
Let me go just grab a quick.
Yep. Take your time.
So for the people who are serious, they're committed, like they're sincerely want to follow through, they're just not doing it. I find number one is helping people, taking some time and talking about what does their day look like, what does their week look like, and helping them to find where the time that they're going to spend following through a training, how to kind of seamlessly work that into their day. So when we look at research on forming habits, because essentially that's what you're doing, you're trying to teach them to create new habits, a new routine, right? In what they're doing with their dog. So one of the things we know in creating habits is if we have a triggering event. So if there is another event, something that is happening on a very consistent basis that we know is going to happen, and that is the trigger for the new behavior. So this happens all the time with me with canine fitness. How do you fit that into the day when they're so busy, right? So it might be like, okay, we know we're going to go to the mailbox every morning, right? So every time you go to the mailbox, going to the mailbox is the trigger. So when you go to the mailbox, either when you're going out the door or in the door, I want you to set up this little, maybe they have a little piece of equipment for their senior dog to do some kind of balance exercise. So why don't you take your dog with you, go to the mailbox, walk really fast to warm them up. When you come back into the house, go over the little wobble board, go over the little balance equipment. And that's going to give your dog at least 5 days a week, or Saturday if the mail comes on Saturday. So 6 days a week, your dog is going to get some balance exercises, and the triggering event is going to be going to the mailbox. And so what I do sometimes when I'm trying to help people figure out how to fit fitness into their day is we'll talk about what their daily schedule looks like. And part of my role is to help them identify where in the day and what those triggers are of how we can try to seamlessly weave in those new behaviors and routines that I'm wanting them to adapt.
That is a game changer.
So,
I think too, back to what you said in the beginning, was listen to them more. And I'm thinking back to me doing a lesson, and they show up and, they got in the car, they drove here, and they're like, being with their dog and working with me for that 1 hour. But I say, like, did you get any practice? And if they're honest, which sometimes they probably are like, oh yeah. But if they're honest and they say, no, I didn't practice, I'd be like, no worries, it's okay. But I like asking them a question. Okay, well, what happened? Why weren't you able to practice? Let's take a deeper dive. And I love that plan of like, okay, maybe whenever you do the mail, you work a wait command at the door, something like that. I love it.
Yeah.
This is great tips.
Yeah. And like this happened to me because I was trying to build a fitness program for multiple dogs. And it wasn't until I sat down and actually tried to map it all out, I realized what I was trying to do logistically, it was not possible. So I had to revisit my schedule. So sometimes they might be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing this, 3 days a week or every Wednesday. But then when you actually sit down, they'll be like, oh yeah, on Wednesdays I'm on the road and I come back and I'm super tired. And what are the odds that I'm really going to do it when I'm exhausted at the end of the day and I've been on the road all day? No, it's not going to happen on a Wednesday. So I find a lot of people need a lot of help in structure and efficiency and those triggering events. And so it's not just so much here, let's practice this daily with your dog, but let's see, when can we do it? How can we do it? When in the day? If you didn't do it, how, why not? And then do the problem solving with them and then talk with them. Well, okay, seems like going to the mailbox, that is not quite working. Okay, what is another thing that we're doing on a daily basis? Let's try something else. Because sometimes you may have to try a couple different things to figure out what that trigger is. Like for me with fitness, I found that when I had the equipment upstairs, even it's just walking up a few steps, I would never do it. But if I put the fitness equipment in the living room when I'm sitting and watching TV, I'm much more likely to have my dog do it. And it's just a simple thing of like walking up like 4 steps. I just like, but if it's right there in the living room during a commercial breaks, I'd be like, hey, let's go practice this exercise. So also looking at the environment and having the environment also appropriately set up to feed it into that new behavior.
Yeah, I definitely think there's so much that we can do at home with our dogs, that clients can do at home with their dogs, in the living room, going up and down the stairs, where the dogs don't pull you up and down the stairs, and you're working on those kind of things. And I hope there's a way you could maybe give us a tip to help clients appreciate the fun time you can have with your dog, the quality training you can do in your home and in your backyard and in your driveway. Because I find a lot of people, they want to jump into the deep end and they want to go down to, the busiest spot where it's going to create reactivity in a reactive Malinois, and they just want to hit it head on. And it's like, no, train in your home, baby steps. So I think finding ways to get them excited about training in and around the home for obedience too, because there's doorways, there's stairs, different environmental things they could implement their day to day.
Yeah, and we do that with fitness because like the canine, like the competitors, like they're more into the fitness, right? But if you're working with a pet dog owner, it's kind of like, oh, I gotta go do, it's like it's work, it's exercise, it's work. Yeah. And so some of the things is like doing it in integrating it into like games and activities. For example, instead of saying we're going to do canine fitness, it's like we're doing tricks. Right. And also, doing there's a lot of obedience and listening and communication when you're doing things like fitness and tricks and things like obstacle courses, right? Setting up, little obstacle courses around the house and, over and under and, and things like that. And so you can do things like that and make them fun activities, but you just kind of build in, right, the training opportunities into that. So, when we're working like with canine fitness with like pet dog owners, we're not necessarily promoting it as like, get your dog more fit or sign up for our fitness class. It was things like, we have, Saturday hiking excursions. So go out with your dog and be out in nature. We're going to go on a hike. But guess what? We're going to be building in the fitness and activity on that hike.
Yes.
Or things like they now have these canine biathlons, and everyone I talk to, they say it's like life changing when they do these biathlons where they're going over these obstacle courses with their dogs, and things from you got to climb through something, the dog has to sit and wait, and then they come, or they go ahead of you and then you slide down in the water behind them or you have to balance or hold them and carry them walking over something. And so you have all of these different things that are you're building in body awareness and obedience and paying attention and waiting. And it's not introduced as, we're training our dog, but instead we're doing, this biathlon, or we're training for the next 6 to 8 months for the biathlon. And so a lot of times it's how you present it. And sometimes you can change how they view it as something exciting by sometimes just changing the wording of it. And I'll give you an example. At the university, I was teaching, what did I call it? At the university, this was a number of years ago, the big thing was everybody was keeping journals. They were keeping, keep your learning journal. And so everybody was doing it. And it's like, we got to do another journal. And I called it was called the director's notebook. These were adult college students. Okay. The assignment was exactly the same that I had used for years for journaling. And people were like, journaling. All I did was I changed the wording around it. And they were creating, it was with some technology in this class. And they were creating little documentaries. So we called it your director's notebook. And now I was like, we're doing our director's notebook. So sometimes it really can be just changing the language and the title and the words you use can change their whole view on what you're doing and can change their motivation too. But there were a number of times I did that for sometimes courses and assignments. And I just simply changed the name of it or the language I used to describe it. But what they were doing was exactly the same.
Right.
It was just how I presented it was different, more exciting.
I wonder if building up for hey, at the end of this board and train, you do these lessons, you're going to get a graduation certificate. That would be something I would be like, with Flirty's name on it, I'm going to frame it. So that might be something motivating, and it's a good time, you give them the graduation certificate to ask for a review for your business too. So a lot of opportunity there.
And it's a perfect time too, when you're if you're doing, there is some extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is ideal. It's coming intrinsically and more, long-term staying with them. But the thing is you can use extrinsic motivations like a certificate, a reward, right? Go to step 1, step 2, step 3. Yes, for some, the certificate is a big reward and a motivator, but also those extrinsic rewards are pivotal points in time to show them their incremental success, like that you've learned, that you've achieved that. Wow, I mastered that. I actually was able to do that. Now I'm going to the next step. So it's an extrinsic reward, like here's your certificate, but it can also feed into the intrinsic, motivation, because it's like, oh, wow, I was actually able to achieve that. And I succeeded and I was successful and I accomplished it and I feel good about it. And so when you're doing things like certificates or stepping stones, level 1, level 2, level 3, anytime that we can help learners understand that the sooner we can see them making incremental bits of, progression and progress, that's motivating. Whereas if I don't see the success until weeks from now, then it can be hard to maintain motivation. But if you can see and help them see the incremental success and achievements along the way, they feel more motivated and they'll keep going. And so, yes, I've had some dog trainers when I've mentioned things like that, and they're like really kind of turned off, like, oh, because they're like, maybe they're not real motivated by these extrinsic rewards. They're maybe, very self-motivated. And I've had a number of dog trainers that are kind of like, yeah, the certificates aren't going to work, or the little badge. But it can be highly motivating, not to everybody, but it can be highly motivating to adult learners. And it is evidence that of success, that you've accomplished, that you've mastered something, and you're going to the next step. And universities are now doing this more and more. They're making degrees now. They're doing kind of more like smaller badges, or you're building up
Milestones.
smaller certificates to then build up. Because if not, it might be you have to wait a few years to get your degree. And now they're actually moving to a lot of these kind of stacking these smaller, so you can there's smaller bits of training, and then you're getting rewards sooner, and then you're building upon that. And a lot of universities are now moving into these kind of stacked programs and kind of these badges that you can achieve them more quickly to go to the next level.
Maybe I'll throw out some of the things I'm thinking of that you can give feedback on, but like maybe saying, all right, practice. And then on Wednesday, I want you to send me a home video of your dog in the house doing this, or in the backyard, something where they have to do this on their own, and they have to be, set the video camera and send it to you. You can also maybe think about setting up, okay, if you can do this time, next time I'm going to bring my dog and she's going to be running by while you're healing, or something like that. Like, we're going to amp up the distraction level, or we're going to meet out in public, and we're going to meet at this park. I'm going to, or I'm going to bring my dog and we're going to meet at the park. So adding like challenges and goals, maybe that way.
Yeah, definitely. And also, we know engaging them in the goal setting. So that could be even more powerful is if you can help them to establish what those goals are.
I love that. So that you're meeting their criteria, and you're not over meeting their criteria and wasting your time working on something they don't even care about.
Especially if you're working one-on-one, then have them be a part of the goal setting and the input on what those goals are. Because if they can help be a part of the creation of that, then they're more invested, and they're going to be more, kind of more committed to it versus, oh, here's your goals, here's what you need to do. So, and if it's like a group class or a group program and you're going to do it for a group, what I would do, you might already have an idea, but I would ask them for feedback, because we know that just the fact that people feel like they have input, then they're going to feel like they have more skin in the game, right?
Yes.
So even if you don't take their ideas, the fact that you asked for their feedback and they feel heard, then it makes them feel more invested, and that, they played a role in it, versus if you just say, all right, everybody, here's what you have to do to, accomplish this. So, there's times I'll have a very clear idea. I know what I want to do. I'll ask, just to see if, they have some ideas I hadn't thought about, but just the fact that I'm listening to them and I'm getting their feedback. So again, if you have a class of 15 people, you're not going to take every single thing that every different person says, but the fact that you got that feedback from them, and then that also makes them feel like they played a role in the development of that. So.
Excellent. Is there, I can't believe it's already been an hour. I've learned so much. Is there anything else that you want to touch on today? I know there's probably so much more.
I don't think we were talking about taking a dog with higher distractions, when they just kind of throw the dog into that high distraction area.
Oh yeah. They just go right into the deep end of like, I'm going to bring them to a restaurant or a brewery, or I'm going to let them off leash here, or I'm going to just set them up to fail, basically.
Yeah. I think part of that is a lack of understanding of them, of how dogs associate or make those associations in the transfer, how dogs learn. I think that there's a need for some education for them on better understanding about how dogs learn behavior and the situational context, and how, the process of that. So they might not be understanding the needs of canine cognition and how they actually learn in the role of the environment. The other thing that I would do is I would think of like a human equivalent. Try to think of something that they would be very nervous about.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
my boyfriend loves hiking and like I don't even like standing on a 6-foot ladder, right?
That's me.
And he really struggles. Like, it's like, oh, I'm here. Like, why are you worried? Like, I'm going to make you safe. Like, but you don't understand. Like, I'm super nervous. I'm standing. I can see over the cliff. And so, like, there, it's like, okay, I can go and do like, I could be on a trail that's 6 foot from the edge of the cliff. But then if you put me 1 foot from the edge of the cliff, like all of a sudden, like, I don't care. Like, no, I don't want to do it.
That is exactly what I thought of with heights, because I have that same, like, it's like phobic.
Yeah.
And if you brought that up, I would totally get it. I wonder if we could think of another analogy, of like bringing your fear reactive dog into this,
Yeah.
environment like a brewery or a restaurant where they're totally stressed out. Like
But
if we could tap onto another analogy.
you have to find the best one would be to find out what their fears are. Like,
Yeah.
they might have a fear of flying, or they might have a fear of,
Crowds.
crowds, right?
Crowds right there. I mean, that's the dog's problem, probably a lot of it.
But yeah, it's gonna vary. I mean, you can give it, like, I can give an example of heights, but if the person has absolutely no issues with heights, it's not the most effective example. So the most effective example would be something that resonates with them. So you need to think about, something, or ask them, something where maybe it took them time to get used to, or they felt, they feel nervous, or they get scared, what
Yeah,
maybe.
they've had trauma, car accident, or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that.
So again, that's where asking questions and getting all your, getting as much information of the scenario. But yeah, if I have trouble for that, if I have trouble getting them to understand something from the dog's perspective, I try to find what would be something similar on a human example that they can relate to help them understand. Because a lot of times, I know, like with fitness, I've worked with human athletes, and they totally don't think about their dog as an athlete. But once they make the switch, they're like, oh, of course,
Yes.
I'm an athlete. I do this. So I find that could be a huge light bulb, but sometimes you have to tap it into that personal connection on the human level first. And then they go, that's what my dog's experiencing. So sometimes giving a lot of examples with the dog, they're just not getting it. But if you can find something that resonates with them on a more personal level, then sometimes that can make them then see it from the dog's perspective. And then all kinds of light bulbs can go off that way.
So, okay, this just a little bit more of your time. Sorry. But what about I want to take my dog to the dog park. That is my goal. And there's just so many reasons why I don't think that dog should be going to the dog park. I don't think we need to go into it like as dog trainers, but we just know that is not a good idea. And I have that conversation and I tell them, why it's not a good idea. And usually I can, change their way of thinking there. But any tips on that? Because that's definitely one that we get a lot.
I would want to dig more deeply into their fascination for going to the dog park.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of times, I think sometimes, and I see it with some of the exercise that people will do, that it's like, I don't want them to do it, it's not safe, but they keep doing it, is sometimes it's because of convenience. And it's easy. Like, it's way easier to exercise my dog. I can go and sit on the picnic bench. I can be on my phone the whole time, or go talk to somebody. It's easy. I don't have to put any energy into it. My dog comes home exhausted. Yes. And then I like when my dog's exhausted when they come home and sleep the rest of the day. So I would look at what is it that they find so appealing about it. It might be that the human socializing. It might be that it's a super easy way to make my dog get tired. It might be that they truly think that, like, their dog needs friends, right?
Yes.
My dog is alone and he needs friends. And so they feel like they're giving their dog a way to socialize and have friends when they have no other way to interact with any other kind of animals, right? So I would look at kind of what is that fascination when you educate them and they're still wanting to go, is what is it that's driving it? Why is it so appealing to them? And then based on that, okay, if you want your dog to have friends, can we think of a safer way to do it? Or if you want to exercise your dog and you really don't have to put any effort into it, What's another way to exercise your dog? Or you want to get your dog tired at the end of the day, right? What's another way that we can do that without going to the park?
I think one is I want to watch my dog play with other dogs. Like I get enjoyment from seeing her play with other dogs would be another one that I would hear.
Yeah, so it might be, if dogs are social creatures, and if they're an only dog and they never interact with any other animals, it might be that, maybe they have a small little group of friends of 2 to 3 dogs that they get along with, and then you have a safe place with just your known little group gets together, right?
Or even teaching them, okay, well, I'll show you some really cool games that your dog will dig. And you're just going to get so much enjoyment from watching her play with you. Yeah. And then us trainers are in our minds, we're thinking like, why don't I want to go to the dog? Like, I want my dog alive. Like,
yeah. But some are like, they're going to be like, they want their dog to, to have, other things to enrich their life. And, it's not, and it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to be like, I get a lot of pleasure and I want my dog to be able to, when they play with that other dog, like it's a whole nother way they engage with another animal that they don't, do with me. So it's like, if you really want that, for your dog, what are some safe ways that we can do it,
So instead of like our scare tactics, once they get attacked at the dog park, then you're going to have all these behavior problems. But maybe trying to help them and listen to them to find ways to fill that void instead of using all our scare tactics.
If they're like, if they're getting more joy out of seeing their dog happy, running and romping around and having their doggy friends, you give them the scare tactics. They've never seen it happen. They've not heard of it happen. They're like, yeah, it's not going to happen to me. And in the meantime, they're like really enjoying seeing their dog so happy. So it's like, okay, what are some other ways that we can give that enjoyment where you're watching your dog and you're like, wow, my dog is so happy. What are some other ways we can do that? But again, it comes back to what is that attraction to the dog park,
Yes. I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this listening, I've heard so much today that's kind of pointing at listen, ask questions and listen. And I think that's what makes us better dog trainers is the more we see and the more we ask and the more we listen. And it takes years sometimes, but you could maybe accelerate that if you ask more questions and listen. You're going to learn more about your client. And, I think too, just one thing as you were speaking is like, I prefer to teach women. I prefer to teach women that are kind of sensitive and they have their little sissy dogs that are kind of scared, and maybe Brett can't get near those dogs. And I'm like amazing with those dogs because the dog sees me female, so it's a little easier for me that way. But that's my ideal client to train. So maybe like making sure that maybe your website and your branding speaks to your ideal client. If you like working with women like I do, maybe having a bit of a softer website instead of like a very bro. So it's just something that I thought of with like trying to set yourself up for success so that you're training somebody that's not a dude that's like on their phone and they have a bit of an ego. And, it really sets you up to fail, especially if you're a new trainer and,
I tell a lot of people and they like, I keep getting these clients that I don't want, or I keep getting aggressive dogs when I don't want aggressive dogs. So it's like, if you keep getting the types of clients that you don't enjoy and that you don't want, you have to look at your messaging. You have to look at what's going out on your website, your social media, your comments, your photos, because if you're continually getting the types of people you don't want, you're putting out the wrong messaging.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Awesome. So there's so many more questions, but we're already over an hour. I don't want to take up more of your time today, Erica. I appreciate you so much. Could you share a little bit about where folks can find you?
Yep. They can, the website is Northeast Canine Conditioning. It's the letter K, the number 9, Northeast Canine Conditioning. And, we're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, but the most active I would say on Facebook. Also for dog trainers, if you want to do a little of your own self-reflection on your own business, we have a little questionnaire. We call it the Canine Biz Quiz. Pretty sure it's the letter K, the number 9 Biz Quiz. And, in addition to the fitness, I have a canine business mastermind, and with my background also with the business side and the technology for people who want to weave in technology, social media help, online videos, online courses, or doing kind of a hybrid. We also have our Canine Business Mastermind program. So I talked a lot about fitness, but I help business owners, dog trainers. So yeah, check out Northeast Canine Conditioning. Check out the Canine Biz Quiz, and if you happen to find areas in your business where there might be some holes or areas of need, I do schedule one-on-one calls to kind of see where people might need help and see if it might be a good fit, or if I have areas of expertise that you might be able to benefit from. And I have a Northeast Canine Conditioning podcast. And for those of you, there are some people, if you're interested, every now and then we have people interested in the human fitness and human health and fitness. I have a new YouTube channel called Fit, Free, and Fearless. And it's specifically for business owners, but on the human fitness, health, and wellness. So I know sometimes there's a little bit of an intersection with some of the dog trainers who are also like yoga instructors or personal trainers. So I also am just have some new stuff coming out for business owners, coaches who want to expand online, like online coaching and stuff. And that is a Fit, Free, and Fearless on YouTube.
Fantastic. And then I'll put that quiz. So we're going to share this on YouTube. I'll put that quiz, the link to that in the description, because I think that would be really good. I like what you said there about like if any dog trainers want a bit of self-reflection, do this quiz. And yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. You're just so intelligent. I'm just so impressed that every time I talk to you, you just bring so much to the table and are willing to share so much information. So appreciate you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Again, I'm Lianne Shinton from Pet Biz Experts, soon to be Automation Dogs. And thank you again, Erica.